you will find the videos that have been posted. So if you have to miss or you want to review something of what we said, most of the time the video will be up there, and it will be so that you can see it. Sometimes it takes about an hour and a half or 2 hours to post a video on YouTube, because they do something to it from this format. I don't know what they do, and by the time they do it takes a while. So if I get a power interruption or anything like that, I got to do it over again. So sometimes I don't get it posted up the same night, or sometimes even the following day. Sorry, I'm just checking if we've got anybody stranded in the other room. I'm wondering where we're at. Maddie said she was sending an email to everyone announcing the room 306. I didn't get one, so I assume some of the rest of you didn't get it either, so I apologize for that. We'll try to fix that, at least as far as the email lists are concerned. So one of the things that we post this up on LinkedIn, and you can review it there. We also have things on Canvas, and we've been using Canvas to some levels of satisfaction and some levels of dissatisfaction from my point of view. We're trying to do better on Canvas every time. Some of you are familiar with Canvas from other schools that you've gone to. Canvas is what's called an LMS, a learning management system, that is a source of availability of things that are maybe files that are too big for us to hand out in handouts, assignments. I can give exams on Canvas, and it has a grading system that can grade it. I tend to not do that. I hand them out so you can take them with you and don't have to do it through your phone or online. But for this course, let me back up. I need everybody to get their email address that they want registered here. And let me show you what this looks like. So when you get to Canvas, which is available through Dixie Tech's website. It also, you can go directly there. The HTTPS is dixietech.instructure.com, and that will take you to Canvas. And I clicked on the dashboard there, and there are 4 courses that are currently still published. I've got a lot more that aren't, but this class is this one right here. And so if you click on that one, there will be assignments available right now under Files, under this column, the navigation column under Files. There are some files that are already uploaded that I put up there. There are 2 files that are the financial statements for Amazon, a 10Q and an annual report from Amazon. The first 2 files, so if you wanted to open those, you can look at them. They're PDFs. There are 2 files of Tesla's financial statements. Their most recent, the 3rd quarter of 2022. They haven't announced the 4th quarter yet because it just ended. That will be when it's published. I'll put it up there too, because we're going to talk about Tesla and Amazon both as examples looking at financial statements in this class. And then there is, this one says Harvard, 32 pages, Manager's Guide to Finance and Accounting. That is the handout that you have, but this is the PDF version of that handout. And so if you want to print more copies or just a piece of it or anything like that, it's posted up here and you can review it. So sometimes I will post videos here that we don't have time to cover in class that I think are of value, and you may want to go look at it on your own. Sometimes I will post larger handouts here so you can have access to them. So that's in Canvas, and it's under Files. There's a thing for assignments and some other things too that I will try to use better than we have in the past. There's a spot here for people. These are people that are in the class, and I want to add, so I want to add everybody's email address that's here in the class. So what I'd like you to do in an orderly manner, we'll start at the front, come up, I'll be talking about some other things. Put your email address in there and click on Next, and then the next person can come and add their email address. A few things about the email address. use one that you can see that will come to you, not one that just gets lost in a box somewhere. We will not sell that email address. You won't get any spam from me. This is confidential to Canvas and within our system here. Use an email address that you can actually access, not one that's buried in a system. Brennan, I don't know if we ever got your email figured out or not, but we've got 3 or 4 in there for you. So he's on this government witness protection program or something. I don't know that he doesn't get his emails to him. If you would just come on up and one at a time, if you would enter an email address while we are talking about some other things, that won't distract too much, I don't think. And then in the end, you will be able to log into Canvas under your email address, and that way we'll have you registered in. We will formally have some introductions when we've got more of the class actually here, but for today, we got enough that we still kind of need to know each other, who each other are. And some of you are full-time students, some of you are full-time employees somewhere else, some of you are part-time employees. That is all your business, except for I'd like to kind of know if you're affiliated, if you're working somewhere, kind of what are you doing, and I think that the rest of the people in the class would kind of like to know the affiliations of who all's in the class, and I will introduce myself a little more officially as well. Why don't we start in the back, and we often will do this and just kind of work our way around reading things and talking about things, but we'll start in the back. Josie, maybe we can start with you. If you would not mind standing up when you introduce yourself, I'd just like to know your name. Whatever you care to tell us about, if you're a full-time student or part-time employee or full-time employee, kind of what you do if you would, and that's all, no more. We'll do more introductions at a later time, but just so that everybody kind of gets a name for the people that are here today. Josie.
I think I got out. Okay. I'm Josie. Did I click it twice or?
I'm sorry, Josie, hang on a second. I read it. Okay. Click on people. Oh, you're gonna just say plus people. Add people if it goes to that. Yeah. Well done. That's the way to do that.
Oh, okay. Wait, oops.
Yeah, that's okay. Josie again.
I'm Josie and I work full-time at Costco.
Okay. She's one of our favorite people, right?
Yeah.
My name is Eric and work at Stewart Awning full time and go to school.
Okay. At where full time?
Stewart Awning.
Stewart Awning. And backyards and cool stuff, kitchens and stuff like that, right? All that. Okay.
I'm Josh. I'm full-time at Jones and part-time coach.
And coaching what?
Swim.
Wow, it's perfect. It's raining for you. If we can get to our cars, we can all get there. And that's Jones Paint and Glass. When you hear the crash, that's where that is at.
I'm Callie and I work full-time in Mr. Appliance and I've been here.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Brennan. I work full-time at Shoreline Construction and live here.
Okay, let's go to you.
Hi, my name is Mindy, and I'm a stay-at-home mom to 6 kids.
Well, so that's not like full-time work or anything, right?
It's busier than a full-time job.
I'm Brock and I own my own business, so we're full-time employed for ourselves.
And what kind of business is it?
I have an excavation company and a crushing gravel pit.
Okay.
business.
Wow. So how much is a pile of rocks worth? That's a big question in your industry,
As
isn't
much
it?
as you can get out of it.
As much as you can get out of it. And what does a crushing plant cost to operate? That's something we'll talk about as well.
Oh yeah,
Welcome here.
thank you.
My name is Alyssa, and I work full-time at Wood River Custom Furniture.
Okay.
My name's Dylan, and I also work full-time at Wood River Custom Furniture.
Okay. And what kind of custom furniture does Wood River do?
Tables, tables, bedroom sets, any
Cabinets.
cabinets.
I mean, that's the whole point of custom, right? Yeah. Okay. I wanted to know if you're commercial, real estate, whatever, right?
Whatever, yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'm Joel Sanders and I work at S&S Steel Fabrication. Okay.
And S&S Steel, for those that don't know, makes cool stuff as well. I love your roller coaster story and Knott's Berry Farms and all
Oh,
that
yeah.
kind of stuff. Yeah. You wouldn't think those would be built
Dude,
in
I'll-
St. George, Utah, but they are. We'll learn more about various companies as we go. Eli?
My name is Eli, and I work also at SMS Steel full-time.
Okay, right.
I'm Brad, and I do property management.
Property management, what
Property
is that?
management, maintenance, air conditioning, whatever breaks, fixing whatever breaks in your apartment.
Thank you.
I'm Elizabeth, and I'm a full-time mom of 5 kids, and I own a business, construction.
Construction,
Yeah.
and this is residential, new
And,
house construction and remodel.
yes,
Okay, all right.
I'm Brandon, and I work at Best Buy part-time. I'm trying to start up a business.
Kind of business you're
You
starting
know,
up
my
for you?
dad
Construction?
knows
Construction also?
Yeah.
Okay. No users were selected to add to the course, so let's go back again, and if this didn't work. I don't know what to do, guys.
Let me try mine, because I have the Dixie Tech email.
Okay.
It might require that. I don't know.
It should not, but let's try that, and if it failed, we'll add more at break and see what we can do. I want to move on, get started in what we're talking about. There's a few other things we want to do in this class, and I mentioned some, I gotta change one or two of them, based on some knowledge that I got of some changes in finance law. And I guess part of what we want to do is stay current with what's finance law. But there are a couple of activities we want to do during this course as we learn about finance. And when we're learning about finance, there are several aspects of finance that we want to have an understanding of. But money is money, and it's got lots of derivatives and lots of names and lots of aspects of how we account for and manage money. But in the end, it is still the ability, whether we're working on a chip system or a barter system or a trade system, it's money that in some way or the other allows us gain in lifestyle or gain in our business. And we may measure the gain in dollars, US dollars. We may measure that gain in some foreign currency. We may measure that gain in cryptocurrency. You'll see on one balance sheet that I will show you for Tesla, where they reported and how they reported cryptocurrency on their balance sheet. So we will talk about money from a variety of different perspectives. But one of the things that is an aspect of money that's important for us is that we manage money at home, and we've been doing that since we got an allowance. And everybody I know didn't get an allowance, but some did. And some of you give allowances to your kids. And so we've been managing money to some degree, well or poorly, since then. And everything we learned about applying to our own finances, of living within our means and going out on a limb and taking some risk with your lunch money, we've parlayed money in various ways all of our lives. And so we're going to build on that, and now we're going to turn the page and go over into our business setting, and we're going to learn things about the impacts of money in business. And we're going to get comfortable and familiar with looking at money from a business perspective. I don't think any of us have our degrees in accounting. I do not. But I've made my living looking at money all of my career in one aspect or another, and we will talk about that. I will introduce myself a little bit in a minute, and we'll talk about the things that we want to cover in the aspects of my knowledge base and where my knowledge base runs out, and we call in additional resources, which we will do during this class. I'm going to get some help from some other people that are doing this full time, and so we'll have people adding their 2 cents worth a couple times during the course, and that'll be good. You'll be able to ask some questions outside just beyond my experience in my travels. I have seen a lot in my travels. I'll share bits and pieces of that with us as we talk about specific aspects of the financial statements, and we're going to learn how to read them. We're going to learn how to report them. We're going to learn how to steal from your boss and misreport financial statements. And we're not going to do that with the hopes that you do steal from your boss. We're going to do that with hopes that if you're the boss, you can catch somebody else that's trying to steal from you. I've been in the consulting business for a lot of years, and I've worked with a lot of companies that are here in St. George, and you would be surprised how many of them have had embezzlement and fraud activities within the company, and they wonder where their money went. And they didn't have systems set up tight enough to catch where the money was going and the people that were stealing from them. Don't do that. Work hard for your money. Don't steal it from somebody else, and don't let somebody else steal it from you. And part of that is just knowing your numbers and paying attention and having it set up so that one person doesn't have the ability to do all of that to you with the money that you've made. You know, we protect our wallets, and sometimes we don't protect our business accounts to the same degree, and we'll talk about that before we're done with this class as well. So we will be looking at one other aspect of money, and that is the investment aspect. This is not a investment class from a perspective of we're gonna put our money into an investment account, we're gonna try to make lots of money on it, and I'm gonna teach you how to pick stocks. That's not the objective of the class. But in order to pick stocks, you had to read a financial statement. And so knowing how to read financial statements gives you the ability to pick stocks, perhaps better than you can now. And so we will talk about investing. Some point in time, I'm hoping that your businesses have big piles of cash that they need to invest as a company. We need all kinds of availability of money as a business. We need borrowed money. We need working capital, or we need the ability to borrow money. You don't always have to operate on borrowed money, but most of the world's biggest and best corporations do. Even when Walmart has a big stash of $1 billion in cash, which they have had at moments in the past, they didn't have it all in the back room in a warehouse. They had it invested in stocks that weren't their own. So how would you, if you were a money manager for a company, and why would you invest it in stocks? Sometimes you park it there because CDs pay 1% per year, certificates of deposit, and maybe you can get just following the S&P, maybe you can get 11% return. And so why not put money in that if you don't need it quite yet? We know we're going to build a building in a while, and maybe this isn't a company, maybe this is your church. Maybe your church has bought a piece of land. I see a piece of land out on the edge of town that says future home of the Catholic diocese, or I don't know what it says, the actual term, but a Catholic church is going to be built there. It's out in Washington Fields, and they got a sign on the lot. And what I suspect they're doing is waiting till they can pay for it, right? They're collecting money within their church group, and at some point in time they will have enough to start building. And lots of times we see churches and clubs and societies like that, the Masonic Temple, the Masonic Lodge, they collect their money, and at some point in time then they break down and build their building. And what is that money doing while they're collecting it? Maybe if it's your church group, you're going to invest it in something. You're not going to have it in a pile in somebody's garage. You're going to invest it in something that you're going to pull out of at such a time as when you're ready to break ground and invest it in a building, which is another form of investment, right? Real estate is an investment, and many companies have a lot of assets in real estate. The corporate headquarters of almost everybody is an asset that's owned by the company in many cases, certainly not all, but in many cases. So I want us to understand investment from that perspective well enough that we can have some fluency there if that winds up being your job at some point in time, that you can talk with your company about where should you put your money, how should you be handling and reporting that way. Most of the time there's not one right or wrong way. There's just fluency and knowledge in the risks, and we are weighing risks in most cases. What you want is you want your money to be preserved and to grow. Isn't that right? And so however, whether it's your company's money, your personal money, your kids' money, you want to teach these concepts to everyone. So one of the ways we are going to teach investment principles, I announced to a few of you that we were going to start 2 investment accounts in this class, and by the end of the last class we were going to see which team could win. I found out yesterday from the attorneys that that's no longer legal to do. So right away, the first thing I proposed to the class is an illegal move, and I'll explain why. What I proposed to do was put $1,000 of my money in 2 accounts, have you guys in 2 teams manage that small investment during the 24 classes of this period, and find out if you made money, how much did you make? If you lost money, it was my loss, not yours. If you made money, you could divide your gain. I wasn't going to take any gain out of it. That part's a good idea, and that's okay if you're willing to do that. What's not legal about it? It is not legal to have multiple people to have login access to a investment account in the investment community today if it's a real account. And I didn't know that until the lawyers phoned me up and said, that's a breach. The only way it can be done is I have to grant power of attorney to everyone in this class.
Can do
Which
that.
means you could buy and sell my house. Which I decided I didn't want to do, because one of you might do that and become my landlord. And I'd rather not have that happen. Somebody else would be mad at me. My kids probably, for one thing. So we won't do it that way because we can't do it that way. What we can do, and they recommended that we do, is we put up some sort of a prize and we trade a group of pseudo accounts during the period of this class, which is traded through a brokerage firm as if it were real cash. It behaves just like it was a real account, but it's a paper account only. Not near as much fun. However, if we set it up and do it that way, and I put some prizes out if you do the best job between now and April Fool's Day, then we might still be able to make that interesting. And the interesting part of it is understanding and knowing why you're making the moves you're making. So I think I will do this, and I think I will have you in teams of 2 rather than 2 teams of lots of people that are in the room, and we will set that up. Hopefully I will have the I's dotted and the T's crossed of which is the safest and best way to do that by Thursday's class. But that is my hope, and I apologize for any of you that thought you were going to make a bunch of money off my meager $1,000. It's not going to happen that way. The other thing that we are doing during this class, and we talked about it, those that were here on Thursday, we didn't launch it, but we talked about it. I want us to do this. I want everybody, this is an assignment, so I want everybody with a little bit of there's a little bit of a loophole in this, so don't freak out on the assignment until I'm done, and then if you've got issues, you can talk to me privately and we can figure out how to make it work. I want everybody in the class to set themselves up as an eBay business seller. And some of you already are. How many in this room already are actively selling on eBay? Ish. The occasional drone or whatever. You're buying a lot more than you're selling. Just the truth is, the truth be known. So we don't have to set up a store. You just have to sell an item, and you can do that for free on eBay. I mean, not if you sell it, you have to pay them something for the luxury of having to do it. It's a percentage that's ballpark 10 to 13%, depending on the category of your sale that has to get paid to eBay. But why we're doing this and what we're going to do to do it. Let me give a little more detail on how eBay works. I don't care if you end this class as an eBay with an eBay store or not. All of us have more stuff in our garage than we want. All of us have a few things that we ought to sell. All of us go to a yard sale or whatever from that time to time, and we see something that's worth more than they're asking for and go, well, that'd bring more money on eBay. That's an antique plate. Okay, well, let's have the means to pop it up there. And what I want to do is we are going to keep records. I want to teach you how to do a financial statement for your business on eBay that you will be conducting between now and the last day of class. And there will be a little prize for the person that's had the most transactions and the person that's had the most dollars generated by last class.
Okay, so what about if we have an account, but it's not?
If you have an account, that's fine. Yeah, you can use your existing account.
Okay.
I would not like to credit you for all the sales you did last fall.
Oh.
I'd like to start as of the beginning of class.
Okay.
So how eBay works, part of how eBay works is eBay has a lot of stuff for sale. They have 1.5 billion items for sale today, give or take a few, something like that. The point is it's a very, very big place, and it's hard to get noticed and recognized on eBay, but there are also millions of people going there. So if you are interested in what are people looking for, eBay has a service that's free that will give you the most the hottest sale items that are selling right now. Like if fidget spinners were popular in high school again, you know, they would let you know how many people are looking for fidget spinners. They let you know what people are looking for. They let you know what people are buying, and this data is live. It's constant data that's out there. You have to look at it and figure it out. But if you were looking for ideas or thoughts, that's a good place to check, and that's free. You can find it on eBay's page, a link to it, and I can't remember the name of the service, but I'll make sure that we all know what it's called, and we will look at it on a later date. eBay has 3 types and 5 levels of sellers. They have private sellers, which is somebody that just wants to sell their baby blanket because they're finally ready to give it up. You know, just you got one thing you want to sell on eBay, you open an account, and you can sell that item, and you have no obligation to sell more. That's it. You just sell it, and it's called a private seller. Now, if you want to sell more things, maybe, but are not ready to really commit to it, but you don't want it to be listed as a private, you can list yourself as a business. You don't have to be a viable corporation to do that, an LLC or anything like that. It's a business account, and what I would like you to, and that's free also. Why I would like you to do that is one of the things that business startups have a challenge in is something called commingling of funds. And commingling of funds means that people come take money out of the cash register because they own the business and they just take it home. They go buy groceries, you know, and that's their right to do. But now their financial statement means nothing, because when I count the cash that they have on hand, that's not a real reflection of what they generated. And so now I don't know how much of this company's money went to the owner outside the books. And while that's legal for you to do, it's not legal for you not report it one way or the other. But it's legal for you. It's your business. You can take cash out anytime you want. But it's like taking out of this pocket and putting it in this pocket. That's legal to do, but it's sloppy if you want to sell your business. It's going to give you a problem with an auditor trying to certify that your funds are accurately reflecting what your business is doing. And so if you have a partner, it gets real ugly. They're taking money out and you're not. You want to establish the discipline of recording correctly what is transpiring in the business. If you later want to make a second set of books to lie to the IRS, you're on your own. That's not legal to do. It's done all the time. It's your conscience and your ethics, and you're able to do all the way up to the edge of your personal ethics. This class is not an ethics class. I'm not going to go into that. I would ask you to be legal in the way you structure your accounts, and we'll talk about that from the legal perspective every time we can. I opened up with what I proposed was illegal, for example. I didn't mean for it to be, but we won't do it because that's not the right way to do that. If you decide you're liking eBay and want to make a business out of that, that is actually a viable form of business. We have what is viable in business changing today from what it was during the Revolutionary War when Paul Revere had a silver shop. And you had to make something and tangibly sell it. We didn't sell a lot of services in 1775. Money was transacted for actual things that happened. The futures market came about when we started to sell futures in the tobacco crop or the cotton crop in early America. And that started Wall Street. And we'll talk about that later. It's a great tool, but for the concept of building tangible things like St. George Steel or S&S Steel do, you know, they got that, their product weighs tons. There's no question about what the product is. We have a change in how people are making money. If you look at the highest incomes in Washington County, the highest incomes are retired rock stars, retired movie actors and actresses, porn stars, a couple of them, athletes, pro athletes. We've got not your normal revenue. We've got a few doctors and lawyers that have retired and have good income streams because they built side businesses while they were practicing medicine. And we have that, but we also have probably a high concentration, I don't know the actual numbers, of YouTubers that have built, you'll see the Parade of Homes, you're going to the Parade of Homes. Do you have a home in it this year?
Yeah, I did.
You do? Okay, well, that'll be coming up in a few weeks, right? So we'll all be interested in tracking that. Parade of Homes, 50,000 people come to southern Utah and look at 26 new homes. And it's a cool event. If you've not gone before, we will talk about it. Happens 2 weekends in February and the week in between. And so we will look at that. But last year and the year before, a few of those houses were being built by YouTubers that were, building brand new $2-3 million houses with a studio in them, and they were showing, videos of posting up videos of their kid every day. And that was a business that wasn't available a decade ago. That wasn't a way to make money. Amazon stores and eBay stores are ways of making money today out of our garage or out of our house that we ought to at least entertain if we're starting businesses of ancillary ways that our company can make money. Our company is not bound strictly to bricks and mortar and making widgets that are tangible widgets. We can buy and sell in many other ways that we didn't used to be able to do it. And going online and building a brand, Brennan's got some ideas on building something that is not parallel. It's not a bricks and mortar thing. It's an online kind of a brand, and building the value of a brand. You all have seen ones who have done that. Louis Vuitton. What is the value of a Louis Vuitton purse? It's certainly not $10,000. That's not what it cost the goods are to build that purse. It's the value of the brand that makes that a $10,000 purse. Or a Jimmy Choo pair of shoes for $1,200. It's not a $1,200 pair of shoes. It's a $1,200. It's a pair of shoes. It's probably a $5 pair of shoes plus a brand, right? And the value of the brand. And so Brennan's toying with how do you build the value of a brand, which is thin air basically, right? It's a name. And so how do you do that? So we'll be talking about that a little bit, but sticking our toe in the water at eBay is something that I want us to do in this class. So the assignment is, I didn't finish telling. So eBay has private and business accounts. They also have eBay sellers, eBay stores. So you can start an eBay store. That is not an assignment. An eBay store, there's 5 levels of stores. The cheapest level does cost money to have. It costs $4.95 a month to have an eBay store. There are some things you get with that. If you choose to go all in, you can do that. It costs that's $5 a month if you commit for a year, so $60 for a year to have a store on eBay, or more if it's a bigger store. But the $60 a year store allows you 250 insertions per month. So think that's ads, 250 items to sell per month. So if you're doing that, that's the smallest they got. The largest they got is called an enterprise. There are 5 levels. The largest level is enterprise level, where you have 100,000 insertions per month. So you've got a team of people that's putting ads up big time. And think those people are generating cash? The answer is they are generating cash. And to give you an idea of some uses for eBay that are maybe a little bit out of the original thought process. Let's suppose your company has an opportunity to build, let's go with wall beds. We have people in this class that aren't here tonight that are at Wilding Wall Beds, and they build wall beds. So we've talked about wall beds quite a bit in previous semesters in this class, and we may talk about it a little bit more. But wall beds, we've learned from those guys that one of the most expensive things is the stain and the color match for the wall bed. And that makes their product line in production a little bit difficult in color matching and coming up with, and having a bunch of colors that we can do any color. You know, if it's in your kitchen cabinet, we can match it and we'll make the wall beds in the same color. And it turned out that they've learned that that's expensive. And it's better to narrow their product line to maybe fewer offerings. It's cheaper from a production point of view because they don't have to have stain in all of these color combinations in stock and not have, you know what happens to paint and stain in your, you know, it's by your water heaters where it's at in your garage, right? That's where cans and buckets of paint go. And you put them there, you're all happy about it because you can touch up anything until you take the lid off of it and you look at it and it's solid. right? It's evaporated out, it's of no value anymore. They have the same problem commercially with all these offerings. If they have paints that stains that they don't use as much, keeping them viable is a challenge and it's a cost to the business. So the idea would be production could be more efficient if we have fewer colors to offer. Let's say 5 colors, oak and walnut and cherry and I don't know, a few offerings like that. But you don't know which few to offer. So there comes eBay. So I'll pause for a second. I was working with Walmart at one point in time, the Western Division, on several of the products that they were adding. One of them got a laugh because it's like, who figured that there'd be a team working on this? It was crepe paper. You know, party supply, crepe paper. You know, and so somebody buys crepe paper for Walmart, and I was working with that team, and they had crepe paper available in 12 colors at Walmart. So, and that was cool because you could have, you know, for weddings, you could have crepe paper you could buy at all the right color combinations for the wedding. And they're looking at their cost of maintaining inventories for crepe paper, of all things. And so we did an experiment. Walmart.com wasn't much of a thing at this point in time. It was a few years back. They weren't doing online sales. They waited for Amazon to beat them, right, before they decided to go online sales. Walmart was behind. They were about 10 years behind on deciding that their bricks and mortar weren't good enough. They needed an online presence. But anyway, so we did an eBay experiment. We put 12 colors, the same 12 colors that they had, of crepe paper on an eBay, a phantom account, didn't say Walmart, you didn't know it was Walmart product, but it was crepe paper for 100 party supplies on eBay. So we put them on there, we put in different markets, different segments to different groups of party planners, parties, wedding supplies, bachelor party, we put birthday, we put it in various categories on eBay where the ads would be seen, and we track sales. What did we learn from that?
There was only 5 colors.
We learned the color that would sell. And how did you know 5? 5 is the right number.
Because we've been to Walmart. So
Yeah.
Oh, you've been to Walmart, okay. And you know there's some colors you want they don't have.
Yeah,
Well, here's why they don't have them. It's my fault. So you put it on eBay, put all 12 colors, see what sells. The ones that sells are the ones you should have, right? The odd ones, those people will probably buy crepe paper anyway. You know, they'll just get a different color. So you can test. My point is, your business can test stuff. Wilding, if they had an active eBay store, could test stain colors and see what was selling. And what sold would be what they ought to invest more in, right? You could, whether it's a big product or something as silly as a roll of crepe paper. We can learn from what we do, and if you want to make decisions about inventory. Suppose you're not a supply store and you're selling car batteries. Batteries are tough to sell online, but they sell them online. And let's suppose that you have to make a decision at what year do we want to stop inventory batteries that will fit cars? How old do we want to commit to provide batteries to 1932 DeSoto? You know, or do we think that there's not going to be many of them sold? You know, let's just look at Toyota batteries. And at what point in time do sales start to drop based on they've all been crashed, you know, and there's only collector vehicles available? So you can learn that from an offering on eBay. We are going to learn a little bit about eBay. We're going to track what we buy and sell. We're tracking to see, are we able to truly reflect our cost of goods sold, keep track of the cost, or do we have things that we're missing so that it turns out we're not really as profitable as we think we are on something as silly as an eBay account, and you're selling depression glass on it, or you're selling, maybe you're into race cars, hobby cars, 1/8 scale cars. Maybe you've got, eBay, you know what the first product was that eBay was built for? Pez dispensers. You know those little Pez candies? The wife of, who actually started eBay, I can't remember her name right now, she and her husband collected those. And in San Francisco, it's hard to find Pez dispensers that weren't, they were at garage sales, and, the Salvation Army would have little toys, half of them were broken and whatnot. They thought it'd be cool to be able to get the online collectors of Pez a forum. It was a bulletin board to start with, to get a bulletin board of where they could let people know which ones they had, and they could put the Pez collectors together. That became eBay. It's like, wow, what a business model that is, right? To have 1.5 billion listings today. That's from Pez dispensers to that. So my thought is that if you have a Pez presence, an eBay presence, and you're not profitable, there's no point in having it, right? But what a great place to learn about profitability. So we're going to track that in this class. You're going to sell stuff on eBay that you choose to buy. Now, the only caveat to setting up an eBay account that some of you may have a personal issue with is what you do have to do to be a seller on eBay is you have to have a bank account or a debit card or a way for eBay to pay you for what you sell. Also a way for them to charge you if you run up charges that are eBay charges. But so in other words, there has to be an account number associated with your account, a payment method associated with your account. They don't charge you for surprise stuff. You don't, you know, their terms are very open. It's very clear what the fees are for. If you have questions, I can help a little bit, or we can get you into a spot where there can be help. But if that's an issue for you personally, that's a very private, personal matter. I don't expect you to stand up in class and say anything, but please let me know if that's a problem, and we'll find a way around that so that everyone can participate. Please contact me privately, not during break. Just call me or text me, and we will talk, and I have solutions that will, if you're not comfortable with establishing an account with eBay. I respect your personal opinion on that, and so we'll work around. I want us to learn and see if we can develop some fun with that. Any questions about any of that? Yeah, one question is, what happens for break times? It's 6:30, and we've been at it for a little while. Let's take 10 minutes right now. Let's take a break. The ladies' rooms and the men's rooms. There are one stall unisex rooms right here. And then down the hall on the left-hand side, there are larger restrooms, male and female. And while you're going down, if you go down the hall that way, look for a sign that says AED here. That stands for Automatic Electronic Defibrillator. That is where the defibrillator is at on this floor. If somebody goes into cardiac arrest in this classroom, we saw it on Monday Night Football a week ago. It's a serious thing. An AED like this one was used on the football field on Monday Night Football. If somebody goes down, we have 2 or 3 things that are needed. If any of you have been trained with CPR, you need to respond. Somebody needs to call 911 immediately. Somebody needs to go get that AED, so spot where it is down the hall. And on this class, this is on this floor, 3rd floor of this building is our medical program. At the other end of this hallway, there's likely to be a licensed EMT, paramedic, or nurse teaching a class. Night classes, we have them there. Go run down to the medical, find somebody and bring them in. We've had somebody hit a beam in one of my classes and had a stroke. Later went into a coma, survived it. We've had a person drop from a heart attack a floor down not long ago, a young lady, and we've used the AEDs. I am the most likely candidate in this room, so please somebody go down, get the AED, and jumpstart me back to life. I might need that. It's not a funny matter, but do spot where it is when you take a break. We'll see you back in 10 minutes, okay? I don't know, see if anybody's email's stuck. I don't know.
Oh, you are? Yeah. Oh, nice.
Thank you.
Okay.
I did. I did not get your number. I mean,
You're like sitting downstairs listening.
okay.
That's a friend.
So this eBay site, you're gonna have to start watching. less worried about
Say
that.
nice after you.
But this eBay thing would be
Oh, that's right.
Project
That's exactly.
If you need
I'm just
my
gonna
number.
flat out text you next time, bring you a hat.
And you don't have to hire an attorney to do it, there's enough online stuff, $75.
I was just like, I just have to look at the bag.
I gave the whole
The
story.
one thing is they'll check to see if anybody else is bringing it before.
There's a green salad too, so
Hopefully work tomorrow.
he wants me to put something in this thing.
You know that's the first thing I ever sold online.
No question about it.
Ever sold online?
Ever sold online? It was between an MIT student and a Harvard student. Yeah.
Go with it also. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cheap and easy enough to do, it's just not question about it.
Cool.
What's up?
That's cool.
Do tell.
Oh, there used to be a thing called the Silk Road, but it's shut down.
Made a bunch of them and I was like, I'm sitting around posting them.
I'm gonna have to concentrate because like in my first 3 lines, I just clean up last time. I put my name on the top line where it said training name.
You're supposed to film that.
Yeah.
I was looking at
You want me to fill it out for you? Yeah.
sports, so you start doing
I wasn't
licenses.
sure if you like registered online if you didn't have to.
Oh, is that what that's for?
Expensive
I don't
license.
know.
I'm just doing it anyway because I have nothing else to do right now, so I'll see if I can do it right this time. Second time.
I believe you
I know.
insurance
I usually make sure it's just-
All the time.
Hope you can do it
I
right.
make your payroll checks.
I training. Well, you know, if you want to goof up on the payroll check and add an extra 0 or 2,
There you go.
I've never done that before.
I'll bring you half an hour.
I'll bring you half a sandwich.
And he was like,
Oh, what kind?
really coach.
Kind of meat in it?
Better be a tuna sandwich. And so I was like,
No.
well,
I was so sick. So after I was sick,
Sports star.
And then that goes to, you know, if you look at how many soccer tournaments there are,
By 2 o'clock, I
people
was
coming down, they all want them
It was so bad. I had that.
Right, since this one was like first.
I found it super fun.
Do you know where,
This
Tomorrow.
Well, you know, just
design-
tomorrow
Oh,
too,
you're fine
Friday.
now.
their
Sounds suspicious.
factories at, design place?
Hey, it's not what I'm
Okay,
saying.
it's right on the
Well,
hill, right on Seaboard Boulevard.
I'm going for a job interview.
You know where Napa is
Wait,
at?
who's that?
Okay,
Jeez.
one block north of Napa and one block that way, it's a half street.
Yeah, you full on was like.
Do you tell this?
To Riley? Yeah.
Cliff is right there, you can't go far, there's a few things.
Yeah, you
There's a
pretty
building
well,
that's got
one of them.
design and print on it, and they're the ones that print those,
Well, you
That
got
was brilliant.
giant,
him going in for
like Diamond Marie and the casino
Where at?
building.
up in like south of Salt Lake City.
Huge flag.
There's like a
I just
place that's
saw,
offering
they
20
took
an hour
doors,
for
new cutter and laser cutters and printers, and they put the old ones outside,
They do the same
They
exact
cover
belt
it with
test as we do,
tarps.
so.
they're just sitting there.
Out of
And
here.
I
I'd walk in, you got,
Yeah.
just walk in and say, I know they work, cause they just sort of.
Right, he's one of my only friends in that way. Oh, man.
Ask him, and
I-
say, what do you got?
Yeah.
I don't have
And,
any
you know,
friends there.
would you like,
It's all
you
my
know,
relatives.
catch flies?
It's a family, so you know. You either have friends or
Got you back in on one of
It's
the
very
eight
pretty.
days when it gets home. They're local owners, the husband and wife,
She is.
so they make decisions. They own Steve Owen Companies too, same people. So they're entrepreneurs.
He's got you gauge.
It's the graphics that sells it. It's graphics and guys and the words. Yeah. That's cool. That's funny. So it's nice. I don't know what that price is. I want that.
That's what I'm going.
Since they got that list together for him to actually do work. Oh, he's been on a,
If it's cool,
Owen and Riley's been on his season on the picture of his dad that's been there for longer than me.
well, you find out what people will say.
It was hilarious. Well, he just like, yeah, and apparently on the like, he was talking about this guy. So he moved it, kept it on property. Which, yeah, hilarious, and, he's just like, so goofy about it. Why do you keep, this shed has been there for 20 years. I was talking to Sam, how bad do you think it'd be if we went to the same place you guys get the plaques from, and made a plaque for the shed, right? Like a 4-year anniversary for the shed.
I'm gonna send, I think it would be, I'm gonna send pictures to people.
That deal was in 1971.
Oh, the weekend?
I looked that up.
Yeah, I heard it on
That was
podcast
early,
about
wow.
someone goes.
I didn't know the internet existed in 1970.
No, 71.
I was all in when you first like bored.
I was 3 years old. I thought it was like,
I was negative.
yeah, you were negative 25 and negative 23.
Hey, I turned 25. I'm old as shit now. 1 foot in the grave. Oh,
Tell me about it.
I feel like my knees hurt now.
You're the age of my middle child. My middlest child.
Oh yeah, that was one year.
I don't really keep track of it. I have it. He was born in 97.
He hasn't even a birthday.
When were you born?
Oh, 1997.
He was 97. June.
Yeah, it was just like the last days.
Wow. Trying to get mom and dad that tax raise for that is.
Yes. I don't believe so.
That's true. It has gender on here.
I put rag. I'm sad that they didn't ask for sex because sex.
No, thank you.
Never know.
A large, for a large, for $1,000.
Just right, more than you. That'd be a big flex. I like that.
Then you get an F.
Where are the wild one guys? Usually at least one of them's here.
We do, I don't know.
Should add to that.
I haven't talked to them, and they didn't email me, so I don't know.
Well, Andrew's on vacation with his
Oh,
family. I don't know where the other 3 are.
Well, you're right, Andrew said he was gonna be on vacation. Now that you said that, I forgot.
Super early every time.
Jake.
Jay, I'm so bad.
You said he wasn't going to be here today for something.
Probably a concert or something.
I can't see it.
All right, so, welcome back. This is ebay.com. We've all been there many times, I'm sure. You may or may not have noticed this little thing that says sell, right up here. You click on sell, and it tells you everything you need to know to sell something. You can't sign up as a seller until you have something to sell. So have something in your hand that you can take pictures of that you want to sell. Now, considerations are, gun safes are hard to sell on eBay. Guns, first of all, aren't allowed on eBay. eBay has a list of things that they don't allow you to sell. Can't sell weed on eBay, or you have to put it in a toy or something, right? You know, I don't know how you do that. That's not the way to go about that. So they have you got to have some considerations. How easy is this to mail? You know, gun safes if you sold one in New Jersey, it's gonna be hard to get it from here to there. And it might be, toolboxes are another example of that. Toolboxes are everywhere, but they're not worth shipping because you can buy a new one at Home Depot by the time you buy a used one and pay shipping to get it here. So that's a bad product to sell, unless it was a toolbox that Dale Earnhardt signed or something. If you got that one, shipping might be okay. There are companies that have got enough volume. I just replaced the transmission on a Jeep, and I bought the transmission in Detroit from an eBay company in Detroit that sells brand new rebuilt transmissions from Detroit to St. George. And you would think that the shipping of a transmission wouldn't make sense, but they've got enough contract that it does, that they've worked out shipping so that it was still more affordable than the same part at Napa here in town or one of the other certainly the dealership. And so you have to work out those kinds of economics with what you want to offer for sale, because you have to get it to the buyer. They may pay for it, but you have to get them willing to pay for it to get it there. And so think about things that are mailable or shippable, that are easier to ship without breakage. China, heirloom China tea sets are certainly shippable, but there's high breakage in those, right? Mirrors are shippable, but there's high breakage in those. And your cost of packaging them up after you sell them, you might be at Staples buying bubble wrap in the big giant rolls, and all of a sudden your cost went up and you didn't make any money on what you sold. So think about packaging and shipping of whatever item it is items they are that you want to sell, and try to figure out, do you need to insure that item? If it's a $200 sale, are you willing to take a risk on it not getting delivered and then you having to replace the item, or do you want to buy insurance on it? Do you want to require insurance to be bought on it? Those are all things that eBay will walk you through, but you have to start the process with the first item that you want to sell. And so you follow their rules, learn the basics. They are all about teaching you how to do it. When you look at how many kids there are that sell things, they want under 18. They don't want under 18s to be making financial decisions. That's a legal question, right? But there's an awful lot of kids that do it in tandem with their parents, and they sell, Beanie Babies were half of them sold by kids through their parents, and a lot of toys and things like that are. And so they walk you through the things that you need, how to write a great listing, taking photos. They allow 12 photos. They have a lot of frequently asked questions here, and there are links to some of their other resources as you set up your account. So you can choose different ways that you get paid when you sell the item, and you can walk through that. I don't care about any of that. I just care that you've got a presence, whether it's private or a business, personal or a business, or even an enterprise if you want to go that big. That's up to you. That's not within the assignment. But this is how to get to it. So ebay.com, and then click on sell, and it will start you through. You click on list an item, and then it will start asking you questions about the listing. And then you get a look at it, and you go live, and you're an eBay seller, and it may be just a textbook that you found at the DI for $1, and it's an $80 textbook, and you want to put it up for $50, and the textbook's easy to ship, right? And so that might be the kind of thing that you do on your next trip to DI. All right, so that's all we're going to talk about eBay today. We will talk about it more. I want to start the process of learning about financials, and as we do that, let me introduce a little bit of myself first. I'm going to pass around a blank sheet of paper. I'm going to make the assumption that only half of your emails got in there. As I looked at it at break time, I couldn't tell for sure, but I got no confidence in Canvas. So if you will please write down the email address on this sheet of paper, we'll pass it around, that you entered in, the one that you want to be in Canvas, then I will personally either do it all myself or hand it to our Canvas people and say, this needs to happen. So if you would please do that while we're talking. Don't copy. A couple things need to be, I guess this is ground rules. One of the ground rules is things that we talk about in this class should be in many cases confidential. I will make fun of companies, and I don't necessarily think bad of them when I make fun of them. companies make bonehead decisions all the time, and we look at them and go, what were they thinking? Why'd they do that? So if I make fun of a company that you're closely associated with, I don't mean offense by it. Please keep that confidential to the room. I don't want to burn down relationships with anybody outside the room because I made a wisecrack about a company. And I don't also want to reveal anything that is highly confidential or even slightly confidential. But if we do get on a topic that should be treated confidentially, we need to respect that within this room. Let's keep things that are conversed here in the room and not take things like if you've got business plans, you're starting up a business, that's real sensitive and maybe confidential in many ways. I want to help, and I'd like the class to participate in helping your thought process. So we may talk about things that need to stay your business, and I'd like you to feel comfortable. If you want to actually further talk about business development plans with me, I will be happy to sign a non-disclosure and confidentiality statement with you that allows you to talk freely about your plans and things like that privately. And that's not for a fee. I charge no money for that. That's not what this class is about. It's just if I can help in any way and talk through something that you've got going and you're uncomfortable about the proprietyness of it, please feel free to enter into a confidentiality non-disclosure with me. So that's, I'm able to do that, willing to do that. A couple things about background that may be irrelevant to the class anyway. My degree is in engineering. I'm an electrical engineer, and that's something you got to really stay current with because it changes really fast. And it's a cool business though, and a cool background. I don't regret technical background at all in my travels. I've worked for Fortune 500 companies. I worked for the government, for the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, in engineering and development. In one, I've worked for DuPont, some large corporations, and I've worked for smaller companies, and I've worked for my own company. So I wound up migrating out of electronics into the medical arena, making medical devices, manufacturing, and that was the transition made sense at the time. I bought when the United States demilitarized what was called the DEW line, the defense early warning system that we had scattered all across the Arctic, aimed at Russia to look for when they fired missiles towards us, that we could triangulate on the missiles and determine where they were going to land and what time they were going to land. We got 12 minutes, 18 minutes, whatever it is, for this attack on the United States that we believed was going to happen. We built an entire radar system across Canada, and it was called the DEW line. And we demilitarized that. They've torn it down since then. We started doing that by satellite. So we're still afraid of the North Koreans shooting at us and other countries that might go hostile, but we don't detect it the same way that we did at that point in time. And they put the patents up for sale on that, the United States government did, and I was part of a team that bought them. And our reason was that we didn't want to build another DEW line. It was, I believe that we could miniaturize that technology and we could build small antennas to put around the human body. And we were working on cancer treatment and imaging at the time. And so we took that technology and built devices that would pinpoint a cancerous tumor, focus a microwave energy or other energy source, imaging or therapy in energy source on that spot in the human body, and they're trying to treat cancer from the inside out rather than the outside in. Radiation therapy fires radiation from the outside to a tumor to ablate the tumor, and we thought you could ablate it from the inside out and do less tissue damage. And so that device worked. University of Utah hospital has one. It's a $2 million machine that we sold it for, and we started building a number of those. We have them installed throughout the world. I worked for that company. We made diagnostic ultrasound equipment as well. That company, I became the CEO of the company, and we were a public company. We were traded on NASDAQ, and so I had to write the 10Ks and 10Qs, and I had to report. I spent a stint before I was CEO of that company as the chief financial officer, the CFO of the company, and that's not my background. I'm not really great at that. I wouldn't put myself on a world stage at that, but I can do it, and I did do it on a national exposure level. So I understand it. I just don't like doing it. But I like knowing what it teaches us, and so that's what we'll talk about predominantly. I'm not a finance nerd that likes to sit in the corner and pore over numbers. I'm much more of a people person. So that's that background. I invented a device to scan for colon cancer. I put that in clinical trials in China, and somewhere during the course of those clinical trials and development of that device, I got an offer that I couldn't refuse to sell that company. So I did. I sold that company and I intended to quit and retire. I found St. George had a lot of sunshine and a good place to come, and so I bought a house here and came to St. George. I started teaching for Kelly Stevens, who was the president of this college, for a while, developing a business management program. This program was part of it, and Manufacturing U was part of it, and we couldn't find a place where it was being done like this elsewhere in the United States, and I still think there aren't many places that offer courses for adults that have a working life and have families and kids, and they're not going to quit and go back to college, but they've got learning that they wish they had done, and so we've built programs to do that, and that's what brought me to this point. I did some consulting for quite a few years in between that, working with companies about where are you now and where do you want to go. I accidentally became a consultant when I sold Diamond Medical, which was my company. Somebody wanted to hire me, and I didn't want to go to work for anybody, and they said, well, would you at least help us out, and we'll pay you to do that. And I said, okay, that's fine. I didn't have to make payroll. I didn't have to raise capital. I didn't have to report to the shareholders. I didn't have to do any of that. It was fun. And I wound up doing that for quite a while, helping businesses of all kinds, not just medical, but all kinds of businesses. The Small Business Development Center used me a lot down here to help small companies, and I worked with some of the larger companies down here, like the Stephen Wade Group, larger groups down here, the Ice Cream Factory, and a few other companies like that. And then now I'm trying to do less, but this class is one of my fun spots where we get to see people that you got business ideas and sparks, and I'd like to see you all hit home runs. And that's really cool because it's possible. It's not just a dream, it's possible. And we all see companies all around us that are successful. And we all see companies around us that fail. And we'll talk about some of them in our town that we will predict their failure. We have some that just announced over, I said at the last class, I noticed over the holiday that Maggleby's closed their doors or is closing their doors, and the barbecue cellar, the barbecue kitchen place, I don't remember the name of it, but on St. George Boulevard, they're closing their doors as well.
The
And
Traeger?
What's that?
Is it the Traeger company?
Traeger, yeah, it's the Traeger place, yeah, where you go get your wood chips. In some cases, all cases, that makes me sad, because somebody's has invested something that was important to them, and maybe their family life savings even, and try to build a business and have it fail is something that I don't like to see. And I always try to understand, why did it fail? We can't always know, but sometimes we can learn. We can guess and we can learn. We can see decisions that were made. Like, for example, we may talk a bit about Circuit City at some point. We got a Best Buy representative in the room. I love Best Buy for toys. But when Circuit City was on top, Best Buy was not. And Circuit City was a national force. What happened to Circuit City? How come they went out of business? Because Best Buy took them by storm, right? Those two stores are very similar, just different colors between Circuit City and Best Buy. They both had the same stuff. We didn't have a Circuit City in St. George, but y'all have traveled to places where there were. How did a company like that was big on a national scale, what decisions did they make? And we could dissect that. I know why they went under. They made two really bonehead decisions, and we can talk about those, because in retrospect, it's easy. When a quarterback makes a bad call, we talk about that on Monday or Tuesday morning, and it's easy to look backwards. So let's learn from looking backwards at companies, and that's what my objective is. A few more small things about my background that I don't like talking about myself, so I do like talking about the stories of my travels and the things that I've learned and sharing those, so I will, and when other things come up, I'll mention them. My intention is to spend the rest of my time in St. George, not in this class, but in St. George. In this class, my intention is for us to have a nice journey into the world of finance. I'm going to start with a video that I want us to watch right now, and we're going to talk about it as we go. I may stop it in a few places. This is a video where class 1 is the first 4 classes of this program are for us to learn what a financial statement is. And we're not going to dwell in the world of financial statements. We're not going to write them. We just want to track money. We want to know how to read them. And so that's a place to start. All of the management decisions assume we know how to read a financial statement. So the correct thing is we did a quiz on Thursday for those of you that were here, and we learned from the 10 questions, and we learned from those 10 questions, we don't know a lot about financial statements. We learned that we need to learn more. And so this class is about that, and enough that we can be fluent in what financial statements are. So when we talk about financial statements, we use the word plural, statements. Why do we use the word plural, statements?
Because there's more than one.
Because there's more than one. And when we get them from our accountant, they always give us 2, rarely give us 3, but when we twist their arm and ask for the third one because it's time for them to do our taxes, they will give us the third one. The 3 financial statements that we'll be talking about in this class, some of you know them well already. Some of you are learning to tiptoe through them and see what they mean. We will start that process tonight.
Some of us hate them.
Love them, hate them. Yeah. And especially if we got mad people associated with them, we hate them. Especially if they expose mistakes that people have made, we hate them. But what I want to learn is how do I change them? Because a financial statement doesn't tell me anything about except for what I did. And if you look at human behavior, none of us like to be accountable for what we did. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and one of them is hey, I made the best decision I could at the time. I thought it was the right decision. Turns out it was wrong, but I'm not a bad guy. I made a mistake. You don't punish me for what I did in the past. There are some laws that say we have to do that in some cases. But in general, just giving feedback to somebody. When we give feedback to somebody, all of us get nervous because most people give feedback badly. They don't know how to give good feedback, or truly constructive feedback. The purpose of giving feedback to an employee, for example, in leadership, if you're the boss, the purpose for giving feedback isn't to whack them. You can't change what they did. It's done. You're giving them feedback because you want to change what they might do next, right? You want to change something in the future. And so in giving feedback to somebody, the only reason I'm bringing it up is because I don't want the same thing to happen next time as happened last time. And if I want to learn to give feedback successfully, I have to dwell on the next time, not the last time. So the more I dwell on the last time, the more that feedback conversation is nose to nose, toes to toes, face to face, me barking at them. How constructive is that? I can tell you, if you're barking at me, it's not constructive, because somewhere in that barking process, I shut down, and then I determine if I have to go into defense mode. Remember we talked about concealed carry? We think about what is it that we got to do to defend ourselves, right? Because I can't change what you're barking about. So if I want to get more successful giving feedback to an employee, the trick is to get out of the past tense as fast as you can and get into the future tense. Because here's what happens psychologically. If I've got a timeline written here, drawn here, I'll use this wavelength. Here's this moment in time, and something bad happened here, and I want to give this person feedback about that. This is when I'm nose to nose, toes to toes, barking about this. What I really want is I don't want this one to happen. So I stand side by side with that person, and I look into the future and say, next time, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? They're shoulder to shoulder with me. We're looking into the future. It's not adversarial anymore. How come? Because nobody's guilty of tomorrow yet. Ain't done nothing yet. Let's talk about it. What if? You know, and I know I'm not going to get in trouble. I'm not going to get arrested for what I might do tomorrow. I'm not going to get barked at from what I might do tomorrow. That's leadership. That's giving feedback. That's looking at tomorrow as saying, how do I change that outcome? I want a different outcome. Well, financial statement is all about this. It's standing here looking at what happened. And if I spend all my time barking at people about the financial statement, guess what? Nose to nose, toes to toes. I'm looking at the financial statement because I want, here we are today, I want this not to happen. I want this to happen. Right? I want a good thing to happen. So I look at these financial statements of these things back here with in mind, what can I learn from this so that this happens? And if we're looking at financial statements that way, it's just a tool. It's looking in the rearview mirror to say what really happened. So we know what really happened. Let's analyze what really happened and accept it. It happened. All right, now what do we do next? How do we build this thing? How do we get out of the tank? How do we change? How do we grow? What do we go tell the bank? How do we convince the bank that this isn't going to happen again? And we got a plan up there. That's what this class is about. But we have to start with how do you read the financial statements to know what did happen, right? So that's going to be the basis. We're going to talk about that. But the course of the class is how do we do the future? How do we drive our future statements so that the bank loves us, so that our shareholders love us, so that we're putting more money in our pockets, so that we're profitable. We're retaining earnings. We're not just burning through growth. We're actually growing from growth. And that's really what we want to do. And if we do it wrong, we wreck the bus, right? And we're another story of another of the unbelievable number of bankruptcies that there are. If you're going to start a restaurant, for example, God be with you. I love restaurants. I love to eat. Look at me. I love restaurants. But how hard is it to make a profit at a pizza joint? Yeah. You think Papa John's has got it dialed in and made, and they do. But even then, it's hard to do, right? It's really hard to do. So if you don't have it dialed in on yours, you're opening a food truck maybe. How do you do that profitably? And then on the food truck, how do you scale it? Pretty easy to scale a pizza joint, right? Do a franchise offering, somebody's going to want a bunch of them. Ask Subway, the biggest numbers in the world. Well, how do you scale up a food truck? Is that doable? Well, the answer is yes, it's doable. But it's also, there are a lot of ways to screw that one up. And so we want to talk about those things for various businesses that you are in the house. To start with, we're going to watch a video. And this video is going to say for training purposes across the bottom of it. That means I stole the video, but I didn't really. I paid $600 for the video, and I got it in VHS form. And I asked for another copy of it. Video Arts is the name of the company. And so they sent me a CD of it. Apple stopped making CDs, man. A long time ago. Nobody's notebook has a CD player in it anymore. So it's available online as well. But they want you to have paid the money. I did pay the money, but it's going to say for training purposes across the bottom of it. And so learn to ignore that. The video's worth it enough. Video Arts Company is owned by a group, an investment group, but one of the guys in the investment group is John Cleese, the comedian from Monty Python. If you like Monty Python, it's the British dry humor. Some of you may have seen this video. I'm hoping, because you'll get more out of it the second time you see it, if you have seen it. If you have not, we hope to pause it a couple times so you can get as much out of it as it's about a 30-minute video. And it's got John Cleese in the video, and they are talking about the three financial statements. The three financial statements are the income statement, which we often call the P&L, the profit and loss statement, because that's what it tells us. It tells us over a certain period of time we have common usual suspect periods that we look at, but it looks at how profitable our business is during those periods. The most common is the fiscal year, and the fiscal year is called the fiscal year because it's not necessarily the annual or calendar year. The calendar year would be from when to when?
January 1st, December 31st.
January 1 to December 31st. A lot of companies organize their company finances to that same calendar. The United States federal government does not. The state of Utah school system does not. The federal government runs their annual year from October 1 to the last day in September every year. The state of Utah runs their fiscal year, and it's not called the calendar year because it's not the calendar anymore, right? It's the fiscal year, and the fiscal year for the state of Utah runs from July 1st to the last day in June. So new budget dollars coming into this college campus, we're budgeting for July 1. And we have a term for that year that's FY24, fiscal year 2024, even though 2024 doesn't start for 6 months after our fiscal year starts. So we'll look at that in accounting. We have to define the period of time that we're looking at. But you make that up. You can change your fiscal year. I changed it by 1 month one time in a public company. Wall Street had a hissy fit about why I did that because we were hiding something. And it gave us some more time to figure out how to better hide it, right? And so you can do that to kind of mess with public reporting. Nobody had ever done it by 1 month at NASDAQ in the whole history of NASDAQ until I did it. Now it's been done once or twice since then, and eyebrows still go up because they want to know why you did it. And I'll explain it later when we get to that topic about why we did that and how it worked in our favor for us. And it may be something, a tool that you want to use someday. But right now, we're just talking about reporting periods. And reporting periods could be, often they're a year. If they're not a year, we often take 1/4 of a year, right? 1/4 of a year, which is 3 months. And every quarter we pay taxes by quarter. If you have a company, your quarterly taxes are due at some point, different days than April 15th usually, but they're quarterly taxes that are due, and we have quarterly financial statements that report how we did the last 3 months, and all public companies are required to submit quarterly results. Those quarterly results are based on their fiscal year, not a calendar year necessarily. The bulk of them are calendar years, but certainly not all of them. So they are called Q1 for the first quarter. So you find when their fiscal year starts. In the state of Utah, it's July 1, so Q1 is July, August, September, right? Those 3 month period. And then the next 3 months is Q2. The next 3 months is Q3. And we're interested in not only how we did quarter on quarter. So I want to know if this quarter is stronger than last quarter. I also want to know how we did quarter on quarter a year ago. Because, why would that be of interest to us? To compare, because some businesses are seasonal or cyclic. I sell snow blowers. I'm going to have higher sales in North America, now, and in in May, not so much in North America. So if I'm looking at stabilizing my business, Toro's first product was snowblower, right? So I want to stabilize my business, and I either need to sell a ton of snowblowers in Australia because their season's opposite of ours, right? Or I need to make lawnmowers, which is what Toro decided to do, right? Make stuff that you can sell in the summertime, so that your quarterly statements you're taking all your profit in 1 quarter. We still have a lot of businesses do that. That's why Black Friday became so critical to so many retailers. We sell our stuff right before Christmas, before the holiday season, even to make it broader. And so the fourth quarter, or whatever quarter that is, of our financial statements, if we compare that to the quarter before and the quarter after, we have some explaining to do. We don't understand. How come sales are big here, and little here? You go, well, look at last year. So the same quarter a year ago, that's what I want to compare. How did we do Christmas season or holiday season last year versus holiday season this year? So the biggest day we learned in this class, those of you who were here in an earlier semester, for selling pizza in the United States, the biggest day for pizza is? Halloween. I wouldn't have guessed that one. That was like, wow. Okay, so if I've got a pizza place, I do want to know how my sales are tracking week by week, quarter by quarter. But if I've got one day like Hallmark cards, when do they sell their cards?
Valentine's.
Big Valentine's Day. Okay, so I want to compare Valentine's Day this year versus last year versus this year. You're going to compare how Halloween sales was this year versus last year versus year before. What that tells me is in the last year, is my business dominance being encroached on by a competitor? Am I getting stronger or am I getting weaker? What's happening on that big day for us? It's not definitive, it's just one more clue, right, to how our business is going. And it might be something that makes me change things for next Halloween. Now I know sales aren't all on one day, in the pizza business, you have to have lots of sales all the time. But those are the kinds of questions that we would bring up and we would look at, looking out the front door. That's an income statement. A balance sheet, what's a balance sheet? That's another one of the financial statements that we look at. Balance sheet is telling us three things. We report our assets, we report our liabilities, and report how much equity the owner has accumulated. Then the whole, that's where when we talk about your net worth, what is your net worth? That comes from your balance sheet. Your net worth. We personally know that if you've got a lot of assets, that includes your house, in all likelihood. And your liabilities also include your house, in all likelihood. And it's very possible for us to owe more money than we actually have if we sold all our assets. That's called a negative net worth. And welcome to America. We have lots of people with it. I would propose in this class that you'll make a vow that you won't be one of them, that you'll be able to craft your future financial statements for your personal life to the point where you can someday get your house paid for and paid off, and you can somehow get your vehicles paid off and get some money in the bank to get your kids educated. Other things you might have to do as a family. I would say there's less stress on life if you can get to that point. But that's not what this class is about. I'm not preaching that. I'm just recommending that. If you can work it that way, your life will be much smoother in terms of financial pressures. But that's the net worth thing. And we want to know in our business, is our business gaining in net worth? Because if it is, I'm building something I can sell. If equity is going up off of my balance sheet over time, my company has more value. If my company has more value, I can make myself a target for acquisition. Some big giant company comes in and buys me out. That's a good day when you're able to sell your business. If you're ready. I mean, you may not be ready. You may not want to sell it. You may want to hand it to your heirs, to your children. You may want to pass it off in some other way. That's fine. But it's nice to have the choices. And if you have a negative net worth, you don't have the choices. You have a business that's teetering on the brink. And most businesses do. Look at Kmart. Who would have thought? Big, giant companies. If you ever traveled in and out of Troy, Michigan. Where's Troy, Michigan? It was Kmart headquarters. There were more jets per square inch in Troy Airport than I've ever seen anywhere. More than U.S. Air Force bases. All these corporate jets flying in and out of, it's like Teterboro, New Jersey. If you've gone into that airport, it's all these corporate jets that come and go. And Troy Airport's almost a ghost town now. But everybody was catering to Kmart. Who would think that they could develop a negative net worth? But they did. And it's not that they weren't tracking their financial statements. They had some stuff happening. And we can talk about that stuff happening if we want to at some point in time in this class. But that's the second financial statement. The third financial statement is the one your accountant usually doesn't hand to you until you ask them. And that's your statement of cash flows. But cash is king. And a company that doesn't have cash usually can't stay in business long unless they are laundering for the mob. Those businesses are cash poor in general because that's the purpose, is to launder money. That's not a legal purpose, and I wouldn't recommend that one. But there are businesses that can survive with low cash, but most cannot. And so having cash gives us the ability to manipulate our market. It gives us the ability to grow. It gives us the ability to do things, to expand, to acquire, to get a raise, to do things. We all know that about cash. But what is our cash flow situation? We will. Yes.
Do the 501c3
That's a call of the company, and that's a solid question. Usually 501c3s do not have to report by GAAP accounting rules. They have a different set of rules for nonprofits. So the statements are gonna look different, and I will touch on that in this class, because I think we need to know that. There's a reason, for example, that IHC operates a C corporation, a bunch of sub-S's, a bunch of LLCs, and a 501c. And both of them. They operate both of the nonprofit statuses. And there's a reason, because that is very, that's a good place to get tax deferments and tax avoidance for companies. People wouldn't want to volunteer for a business that's making money hand over fist, but people will volunteer for the hospital because they all believe it's nonprofit. Sorry, it's not. Never was. Never. It's a lot of money goes through that nonprofit. So nonprofits actually have to. Most of the nonprofits, and there's only a few really, probably less than a dozen that I've consulted for, and I can tell you a little bit about the structure on those. All but one of those zeroed their books at the end of the year. Yeah.
What's so interesting is that IHC is tied in with Select Health, an insurance company, and they're like this. I don't know. It's so
One's major profit and one's
Yeah.
a pseudo nonprofit.
But they're the same,
Yeah.
and they work together on everything.
Yeah.
Especially here.
Especially here, because in this market you have the closest to monopoly that you can
Yeah.
get, and that's going to be challenged in the next few years. But it's not soon enough, in my personal opinion. Although I like if we could be on the owning side of a monopoly, but rarely can you. There are one of the acts that most businesses get challenged with is called the Hartley-Pattman Act. We saw that in our market when Family Dollar was acquired by Dollar General, and we saw the United States Congress saying, "Time out. We won't approve this acquisition until we go into every market and we evaluate those markets for non-compete." And so they required, we saw that with Albertsons, when Albertsons split their business into three, sold it off in three ways, retained 1/3, sold the other 2/3 to two entities. So there were three, Albertsons became three, and which stores got to stay open and which stores had to close was a decision that was made by the government, not by the buyers. So you can't have two profitable grocery stores on the same block that resulted from the acquisition. One of them had to close, and same with Dollar General and Family Dollar. You saw some Family Dollars that closed, and you didn't know why. It was most likely because of proximity to another store that came out of the acquisition. So the antitrust laws are there, and that may affect your business at some point in time. We can talk about that a little bit when it's appropriate, when we get there. But right now, the third financial statement that we look at is cash, has to do with knowing where your cash is going. And the big learning for all of us is that a profitable company can run out of cash. And every business owner needs to understand that. And that's one of my objectives of this overall class, is to burn that understanding in our mind. We can think we are operating profitably and we can run out of cash. And on that day, we face going out of business. We can't operate without cash. We have to come up with cash some way. And we're going to call Aunt Mabel and say, "I need $100,000." We're going to go to a fraction and say, "I've got $100,000 in receivables. I'll sell them all to you for $30,000. I need cash." And that's when we start to make desperate business decisions that I don't want to see us have to get to that spot. I want to see us to be able to manage our business to the point where we know ahead of time what's coming, what's happening. And so we're planning for those events in such a way that we can successfully navigate through them. I find there's a book that those of you that are thinking about starting a business that was published a decade or two ago. It's called The E-Myth, E-MITH, E-Myth. And the E-Myth has been republished a few times. The concept in the E-Myth is something that we need to understand. The concept in the E-Myth is, the E stands for entrepreneur, not for electronic or email. It's the entrepreneur, the E-Myth, the myth of the entrepreneur. A business to be successful must have a strong technician, somebody that knows the nuts and bolts of your stuff, what you're doing. If you're a shoe repair, boot repair business for the rodeo, You gotta be technically able to repair boots and do it right every time and do it beautifully so people want it. So you're a technician. You understand that, boot repair. But you also have to be a money person. You have to account for the money that comes in and what you're gonna spend on equipment and how the cash is gonna work in that business. And you also have to have a sales team. And a company that's missing those three elements will struggle. It doesn't matter which of the elements it's missing. Most of the time, we see startup companies being strong on the entrepreneur side, the technician. We got somebody that's technically savvy. They start a restaurant because they're an awesome cook. They're not a business person, but they're an awesome cook. And so that business is probably going to struggle. We see businesses, I'm working with a company here in town, they're chemists. They're fabulous, they're molecular biologists. And they're in the molecular diagnostics, and they're unbelievable. And they're PhDs, all of them, and they're unbelievable in the science side of things. But they don't have a salesman in the house. And you can't build a company that's doing scientific research without a sales engine. And that sales engine is what, if you don't have a purchase order, you don't have a business. If you don't have somebody that's willing to buy what you got, you don't have a business, and you're not going to generate cash. You're not going to replace the cash that you borrowed to start the business up. And so having a business means you have to have the ability to know the numbers. That's what this class is about. You have to have the technical expertise, which is probably what you come to class with. And you have to have a means of building a sales engine, or nobody wants to buy your stuff. And if nobody wants to buy your stuff, you're tacoed. And so we have to develop all three sides of those things. And this class is about finance, not sales, but I've got to touch on it because we can't be closed-eyed on that. We have to understand, open eyes, that those are three areas we have strength. You can be a great builder. You can be a great subcontractor. And if we don't have a sales engine, we're not going to make it. Nobody wants our stuff. And so we will talk about all of those because we got to build those in being stable. So those are the three statements that we are going to analyze. Let's take a look at John Cleese's point of view on finance. And it's got the British accent, so I forgive that. I ask forgiveness on that. It's got the British humor, which is dry humor. So go ahead and chuckle if you see something or hear something funny. It's intended to be. And it's called the balance sheet barrier. This is from Vimeo, and that number that you'll see pop up on the screen, you can find it on Vimeo. You don't have to buy it for $600 like I did, but I can use it in class with clear conscience because I paid for it.
Is Julian Carrup. I am Deputy Long-Range Planning Executive of Universal International. We have companies all over the world. We turn over 700,000 million pounds a year. Or is it 700 million pounds? Or dollars? Anyway, something like that.
I'm Rita Scroggs of Scroggs Manufacturing. I have a wooden shed in Brixton. Last year I turned over £301,427.53.
I work on the 51st floor of Universal House, and I am widely respected throughout the corporation.
I work in a corner of the shed, and my team think I'm a bitch.
I am a highly sophisticated manager. I know all about TQM, Theory X and Theory Y, hygiene factors, management matrices, and of course, the hierarchy of needs. The only thing I do not understand is finance.
I am a highly unsophisticated manager. I don't know what the hell he was talking about, but I watch the figures like a hawk.
My colleagues are highly sophisticated managers too. They do not understand finance either. All of us feel slightly uneasy about admitting it, so we have a gentleman's agreement not to refer to it. We leave the financial arrangements to the accounting people, just as we leave the catering arrangements to the canteen people. We believe in trusting people.
I don't trust anybody. But then fortunately, I'm not a gentleman. I cut my own sandwiches and I do my own accounts.
I would lose face if I admitted to anyone in the corporation that I do not understand finance. since I am constantly approving financial statements, draft accounts, and balance sheets.
If I didn't understand finance, I would not lose face, but I would lose all my money.
I have come to this person for help because she is so basic and unspoiled that she will use short, simple words that I can understand, and not the obscure mumbo-jumbo that accountants try to frighten you with.
Because I am so basic and unspoiled, I'm very flattered by his attention. But just what is it he doesn't understand?
Well, I understand a great deal about management, but pitifully little about how business actually works.
Right. Later on, I'll tell him about working capital, P&L accounts, and cash flow forecasts. But we'll start by looking at a balance sheet. It is the window which reveals the business.
It is not the window which reveals the business. It is the blind drawn by accountants to keep us managers in the dark.
Then for the time being, we'll forget about the balance sheet. We'll just talk about money. In business, money only does two things. It comes in and it goes out. There are two basic things you have to know. Where did it come in from and where did it go out to? All right?
Yes, I understand that.
Good. So, let's begin with where it comes from. Say you're starting a business. There's only two places you can get money from. The first is by risking your own and perhaps getting some other people to share the risk with you. That money is called share capital, or the equity, and the shareholders are the owners of the business and share all its profits, or lose all their money. The second way to get money is to borrow it on a long-term basis and pay interest. That's called loan capital.
Light is beginning to dawn. There are only two places money can come from: share capital and loan capital. The owner's money and the money that they borrow from somebody else.
You've got it.
In our terms, some of these terms like pounds are not the same as dollars, right? You've got to bring your business in pounds. Share capital is a term we use. It's often called equity financing or equity capital. We also use loans as a source of money, and that's often called debt financing, where we finance the company from borrowing money. So the same principle is true no matter what country we're in. Our money has to come from one of two places. It has to come from our own savings, or our dad's savings, or our aunt's savings, or our friend's savings, or somebody that believes in us that's going to help us build the business. They're all going to put money, and it may be called share capital because they may get a share of your business as a result of doing that, right? They own some equity. Maybe they put in half the money, they own half the company. You know, that's your deal to negotiate, but it's shared money that's going into the business. The other way we do it is we borrow, but we have to borrow from somebody that believes that we have the ability to pay it back. And the banks in town, Zions Bank doesn't believe anybody for anything, right? They're pretty much sure that you can't pay it back or you won't pay it back. And so borrowing money is difficult in a startup setting, but it's still a source of income. We can borrow or we can share. So those two terms are.
Now that you've raised the money, where are you going to put it?
I am going to put it into the business.
I see. And what part of the business?
Into the part of the business that you tell me to.
Right. Well, just as there are only two places money can come in from, there are only two places money can go out to. First, you can put it into things you need to keep. Buildings, machinery, cars, furniture. All those are called fixed assets. And second, you can put it into things you need to sell. Raw materials, piece parts, packaging materials, and so on. That money is called working capital.
I I've heard of that.
So, there is the basis of every business. The two places money can come from: share capital, risking your own, and loan capital, borrowing someone else's. And the two places it can go to: fixed assets, things you need to keep, and working capital, things you mean to sell.
I now know, which I knew all along but did not know that I knew, that a business is based on cash and that you start by saying where you got it and what you did with it. I now understand how a business works.
So, the term working capital is misleading, isn't it? There's two places we can get money. Let's assume we've got it, we borrowed it, or we've risked it ourselves, or found other people willing to risk it. There's two places it can go. The first one is fixed assets. That makes sense, right? We buy the equipment we need to do our stuff. You need a welder, you need a press, you need, whatever machines you need to do your business. Maybe you need a postage stamp machine to ship shipments. It's stuff that you intend to what?
Use for the business.
To keep. It's stuff you intend to use in the business and keep it. It's a dump truck. It's a grader. It's a rock crusher. It's a something you intend to keep. That is a fixed asset. Everything else is working capital. That term hasn't been burned in our mind in that meaning. We think of working capital as cash, but working capital is actually the stuff that you buy. It's the money required to buy the stuff that you buy to sell. So all the raw materials you intend to convert into something, a finished product, the pieces you intend to assemble, weld together, the raw steel, all of those things are part of working capital. Welding rod, welding gas, that's a consumable. It's not a fixed asset. You didn't buy it to keep it. You bought it to put it into a product you're going to sell. Even though you're going to consume it, it's, you're going to burn it up. The gasoline you put in your grow grader, that's part of the fixed assets of operation. It's part of your electrical costs and things like that, right? Those are fixed assets. The rest of the stuff is stuff we bought it to sell it. Maybe we're going to convert it, but we're going to sell it.
Hold on, did you just say that the fuel you put in your road grader goes into fixed asset?
On the day of your balance sheet, yes. At the end of the year, no. There's tax issues on that as well too, because you put hopefully red fuel in it, right? And so there's tracking and fuel. And as soon as I said that out loud, I knew I had a bad example. So it is a true example, but it's a bad example. So the tanks are full. The jets are fuel. On the day that SkyWest does their balance sheet, that is an asset because it's jet, it's fuel that's in a plane that's getting ready to take off. The actual fuel bill is a variable expense, right? It's not, it's still part of working capital. Yeah, it's money they had to buy. And there's transportation. 2 years ago was the last time I saw their numbers. Their fuel bill was $1 million a week. That's not a fixed asset. That's a variable cost, right? Based on how many miles or trucks. Right. That's not the point of our discussion right now. I derailed by a bad example. I'm glad you nailed it and caught it. It depends, there's a technicality on that, where it's at and what you're looking at.
What day of the year it is?
What day of the year it is. A balance sheet is a snapshot of one moment in time. An income statement is a reflection of the year in total. I'll explain that in a little bit better terms in a minute.
He does not understand how a business works because he does not understand working capital.
I cannot imagine why she thinks I do not understand working capital.
Then let us ask him 3 questions. Does the rent of the factory come out of working capital?
Mm-hmm.
Does bank interest come out of working capital?
Mm-hmm.
Do wages come out of working capital?
Mm-hmm. Well, I can now understand why she thinks I do not understand working capital.
Do you want a lot of money in working capital or a little?
All capital is good, so I want a lot.
Mm-hmm. You want as little money as possible tied up in working capital.
I've changed my mind. As little as possible. Right, yes, I see that. No, I don't. I do not understand working capital. Not at all.
Right. Look at this. All businesses are the same. You put money in and you get money out. Sometimes you get less money out than you put in. Then you go bust. Sometimes you get more money out. Then you're in business. Is that clear?
Yes. Yes, I'm not stupid, you know.
Oh, good. Now we know about the fixed assets, the things you need to keep. They're obvious, but they can't make money on their own. To make money, you need working capital. You need it to buy raw materials, and you need it to pay the workforce to turn the raw materials into something you can sell at a profit. You need it to pay the overheads, administrative staff, electricity, rates, insurance, postage, telephone, and all that. Not to mention the interest on the money you borrowed. Then you can start to make money.
How?
Well, look at Scroggs Manufacturing. I make teaspoons. All I do is spend 60 on 10 kilos of light alloy strip on Monday, change its shape, and sell it for 300 on Friday. I buy another 10 kilos of light alloy strip, I pay the workforce, I pay the overheads, and I put a bit aside. And I keep a bit for myself, right?
No, I'm not happy.
Why not?
It's so simple, I am getting suspicious.
Well, let's look a bit closer. Take that light alloy strip I buy on Monday for 60. On Tuesday, I pay Harry 20 for stamping it into blanks. Now I've got 80 invested in stamped blanks. On Wednesday, I pay Sharon 20 to press the blanks into spoons. Now I've got 100 invested in pressed spoons. On Thursday, I pay Bill 20 to pack the spoons and send them to the collection bay. Now I've got 120 invested in packed spoons. On Friday, I pay all the bills for the week's overheads. They come to 100. So now I've got 220 invested in a crate of teaspoons. That's 220 tied up in working capital. And on Friday afternoon, the customer collects the spoons and pays 300 for them. So I have recovered my investment of 220 in working capital and made 80 profit.
I see. It's really a sort of cash merry-go-round. Well, look, you put in cash and get raw material. You put in more cash to get it stamped, pressed, and packed. You put in more cash to pay the overheads. Then you sell it and get your working capital back and a bit over. Then you start again. See, cash merry-go-round.
For a sophisticated manager, that's quite a sensible statement.
Ah, I've got something right. I now understand working capital, sort of. I see that working capital is all the money tied up in things that you hope one day to sell to customers. What I cannot see is how she can live on 80 a week.
I cannot live on 80 a week.
I've got something else right.
I do not have to live on 80 a week.
Ah, she has a private income.
I do not have a private income. What has not struck him is that I have a 5-day week. I do not buy light alloy strip on Mondays only. I buy it every day. So, every day Harry stamps out 10 kilos of blanks. Every day Sharon presses 10 kilos of spoons. Every day Bill packs the spoons and takes them to the collection bay. Every day a customer collects the spoons and pays for them. It is a continuous process all through the year. So the cash merry-go-round goes on all the time. Because he is sophisticated, he will now be able to tell me how much I clear a week.
This is a sort of problem I'm good at, because I am sophisticated. She clears 80 a day, 5 days a week, so she clears 400 a week.
He may be sophisticated, but he's as thick as 2 short planks. He's walked right into my trap. Watch.
Ah,
Now, you say I clear 400 a week.
400 is correct.
Okay. If I spend 60 a day on strip metal, how much do I spend a week?
300.
If I pay Harry 20 a day for blanking, what do I pay him a week?
100.
And Sharon for pressing?
100.
And Bill for packing?
100.
And overhead?
100.
So, how much goes out every week?
700.
And if I collect 300 on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, how much do I collect a week?
5 times 300 is 1,500.
So, if I collect 1,500 a week and spend 700 a week, how much do I clear?
800. I have fallen into a trap. I said she cleared 400 a week, but she has proved she clears 800 a week. I do not see how she has done this. But I do see how she can live on 800 a week.
I have trapped him because he does not understand about overheads. I have to pay 100 a week overheads whether I make 1 consignment of teaspoons or 5 consignments. He charged a week's overheads onto every day's consignment, so he put 4 times 100 too much on my costs. But I only pay a week's overheads once a week.
I have learned my lesson. I see that overheads don't multiply like materials and labour. She only pays her overheads once a week, so the more consignment she produces each week, the more profit she makes on each consignment, because they divide up the overhead into smaller portions. I now understand working capital.
Good. Now that he understands working capital, we can leave the balance sheet. I can now explain the profit and loss account to him.
Ah, that's a different thing, is it?
Yes.
This is going to be a different thing.
Yes. The profit.
This is rather exciting.
Profit.
You know, I'm enjoying this more than I'd anticipated. I rather imagined.
Shut up now.
Certainly.
Thank you. Now, look at my profit and loss account for 1 week. Start with my income. I sold 5 lots of teaspoons at 300 a time. That brought in 1,500. Income, 1,500. Now look at my expenses. I bought 5 lots of strip metal at 60 a time, so 300 went out on materials. I paid Harry and Sharon 100 each, so 200 went out on manufacturing labour. I paid Bill 100, so 100 went out on distribution labour. I paid out 100 overhead, so I made a trading profit of 800 on the money-go-round. Then I got 20 on some cash I put on deposit and paid out 20 in interest on my loan capital. So I ended up with a net profit of 800.
Now I understand the profit and loss account. But what I do not understand is this. If she's making 800 a week profit, why is she not filthy rich?
He does not understand why I am not filthy rich because he does not understand what profit is.
I understand perfectly well what profit is. Profit is champagne and caviar and a decent tailor.
Profit is not champagne and caviar and a decent tailor. Profit is having a bigger business at the end of the year than you had at the beginning. Profit is what lets the business grow. Working capital makes the business go round, but it can't make it grow bigger. Not unless it makes profit first. Suppose I want to make my exports grow. I send catalogues to a lot of Europe's leading teaspoon buyers. I need extra money. Then suppose I get an export order every week. I have to produce an extra consignment, another 10 kilos of strip metal. I need extra money. Overtime for my people. I need extra money. Then I'll want a packing machine to help Bill cope with the extra volume. Extra money. There's no doubt about the best place to get extra money. Use the extra that came out of the working capital merry-go-round last year. And that extra is profit. Now, the first thing that happens to profit is the taxman takes his slice of corporation tax. Right? Then I and my fellow shareholders decide how much of what is left we want to put back into the business for next year's development and growth. Yes, okay. And the remainder, if any, we share out as dividends. For you, that one's for you, that one's for you. Thank you. For me. And we can spend that on caviar and cigars and a bulging wardrobe of fabulous frocks if we want to.
Ah! I'd never thought of it like that.
Wait a moment. Remember the two places money came from? Our own money we risked and the money we borrowed?
Yes?
Well, once the business makes a profit, there's a third place. The profit we put back into the business. It's called reserves.
Ah, yes. I understand reserves. And reserves are chests full of money stashed away in a bank vault.
Reserves are not stashed away in a bank vault, or not necessarily. They could be represented by machinery, or raw materials, or property.
Machinery? Machinery can't be reserves.
Yes, it can.
Well, she's using the word in a very silly and misleading way.
Yes, but that's the way it's used.
Oh dear, oh dear. Now, please explain reserves very slowly.
Right. Reserves is an entry in the in column. It merely states where the money came from. From money retained in the business, it does not state what the money has been used for, where it has gone to.
Ah.
Some of it can go to increase fixed assets, like the packing machine for Bill. And some of it can go into working capital, like the extra strip metal and the overtime for Harry and George. And some of it can be put by for a rainy day. You can invest it.
Or stash it in a bank vault.
If you're very sophisticated, yes.
Well, now, let's see if I've got this right. Once the business has got going, there's 3 places you can get money from. Your own, share capital, borrowing, loan capital, and retained profit, reserves. And then there's 3 places it can go to: fixed assets, working capital, that's the old merry-go-round, and investments.
He's got it. By George, I think he's got it.
So one of the things that is a walk away from this simple way of explaining the business is that what happens if the merry-go-round slows down? You're going to have less money, right? So if you need more money, what do you need to do to the merry-go-round? Speed it up. So if slowing the merry-go-round causes less profit to be produced, speeding the merry-go-round up causes more profit to be produced. Does that make sense? In a very childish way, this is exactly how business works. And when we look at a business, one of the things we're looking at is throughput velocity. We're looking at speed through a business. We look at turns. We look at inventory turns. So one of the working capital's inventory is part of the working capital. It's things you've bought with the intention of selling. So to speed up the merry-go-round, you speed up your inventory turns. And we talked about Walmart. Walmart and the last I saw, Costco actually fits this same model. Both Costco and Walmart, when I looked at their financials, turns their entire inventory of toilet paper every day. Every day they sell all the toilet paper they have. That's why we ran out of toilet paper a year and a half ago. Remember when that happened? Supply chain, we went on a rampage and bought toilet paper. That meant we bought more than a day's supply of toilet paper at both Costco and Walmart. And it put a strain on the chain. And that had a ripple effect that we just blew my mind that was even possible. But that's because a lot of stuff that a store buys, you see it sitting on the shelf. I go to Jones Paint and Glass in their retail store and look at gallons of some automotive paint that they have sitting on the shelf. It's got dust on top of the the can. How come? Because it's been there a while. They are maybe only gonna sell and replace that can twice or 3 times in a year. Where Walmart's selling every roll of toilet paper every day. So it's not sitting on the shelf for any amount of time. That's speeding up the merry-go-round. That's what that's doing. So thinking about our business as that merry-go-round, it defrays our fixed overheads over more volume, and that makes us more profits, which makes a ton of sense. Now the devil is in how do you do that? So we'll be working on that as well. But speeding up the merry-go-round is a phrase I want you to have in your mind as we look at some of these ratios. So how often do you collect your entire accounts receivable? You look at a 30-day aging report. If everybody paid their bill in 30 days, you would turn your aging report 12 times a year, right? So if you got paid twice as fast every 2 weeks, you'd speed up that merry-go-round, right? The merry-go-round would be going around twice as fast. You're wringing more cash out of the merry-go-round. That's cool to kind of understand.
Yeah, that's quite enough of that, thank you. Well, now at last we can look at a real balance sheet.
Well, we can look at a balance sheet, but it will not get us very far because I do not understand that bit over there about current assets and current liabilities.
Well, I see his problem. That bit is simply a snapshot of the working capital at a single moment in time. The merry-go-round suddenly frozen. Look, if I stop the factory working, you can see that 60 of my working capital cash has been turned into strip metal. It's just as much of an asset as cash, but in a different form. So I have 60 of assets in raw material. Then I have stamped blanks, 10 kilos of strip metal with 20 of Harry's labour as well, 80, and pressed spoons, 10 kilos of strip metal with 20 of Harry's labour and 20 of Sharon's, 100. That's 180 of assets in work in progress. Then there's a case of spoons packed by Bill and taken to the collection bay. That's 60 of strip, another 60 for 3 people's work, 120, and the week's overhead of 100. That's 220 worth of assets in finished goods. Then there's 300 I'm owed for a consignment collected last week and 200 I put in the bank yesterday. So there's my current assets. Raw materials 60, work in progress 180, finished goods 220, debtors 300, cash at bank 200, that's 960. Take away the 2 bills I haven't paid yet for 60 and 100, my current liabilities, that's 160 I owe my creditors. So my net working capital at this moment is current assets of 960 less current liabilities of 160, 800.
I see.
Phew. Now we can look at the complete balance sheet again, and he will explain it to me.
I will now explain the balance sheet to her. Will I?
Yes.
Well, there are only 3 places money can come from. Share capital, which is put in by the shareholders on their own risk. Loan capital, which is money borrowed on a long-term basis. And reserves, which is profit put back into the business. But the money's not there, it's in the business. Then there are only 3 places in business that money can go to. Fixed assets, which are things you mean to keep. Working capital, which are things you mean to sell. The money can be in raw material, work in progress, or finished goods, or in the bank, or people can owe it to you. And you subtract the money you owe other people. And investments, which are savings for a rainy day, or money put in someone else's business.
When we look at Amazon's balance sheet, Tesla's balance sheet, that's exactly all we're missing, right there. When your accountant gives you your numbers for your business, that's what they're giving. And if we understand it, and it's just those 6 labels, it's not complex. how you classify the fuel tank, whether it's which place it's in, is some discussion, and you're involved in those discussions probably every day on where you post things at S&S Steel, you know, and some things there's a law on how you have to post it. Sometimes it's just a determination by an owner that says how they want it classified. What the law is, you have to be consistent. You can't change it one day and change it the next and then change it back without having some risk of having falsified your financial statement. But these 6 areas is all we're really looking at any balance sheet that we're looking at. They call it a balance sheet, by the way, because the stuff on the left side has to equal the stuff on the right side. Always. And the way you make it equal is, if this number is too big, this number has to get smaller or bigger, whichever way you balance it with equity in the owner. So their equity gets dried up or grows based on how the rest of the balance sheet, how it looks. All right, we're getting close to being done with class.
Very good.
I got it right. Well, I now understand how business works.
He does not understand how business works because there is one thing I still haven't told him. I will prove he doesn't understand by asking him whether he would accept this order.
Now this order is from Superior Slacketerias Limited. They want 5 shipments of teaspoons a week for 8 weeks from the 1st of April. Instead of the normal 300 per shipment, they will pay 400 to compensate for taking up the entire production capacity for the 8 weeks. Well, as a sophisticated manager, I can work this out. 100 a day is 500 extra a week. 500 extra a week for 8 weeks is 4,000. That is an extra profit of 4,000. I will accept this order.
He hasn't read the last sentence.
The last sentence reads, payable in full by the 30th of September.
I will now introduce him to the last of the 3 crucial documents for understanding business finance. I've shown him the profit and loss account, which tells you what happened to your money in the past. That's your financial history book. I have shown him the balance sheet, which tells you where your money is at present. That's your financial snapshot, a picture of the business frozen at a single moment of time. I will now show him the document that tells you where your money will be going in the future. That's your financial crystal ball. It is called the cash flow forecast. But first, I must ask him some more questions. How much a week will it cost to make the spoons for Superior Slacketerias?
Well, I think I can answer that. 50 kilos of light alloy strip at 6 per kilo is 300. Next, 20 per day for each of the 3 people is 60 a day. That's 300 a week, making 600 so far. And 100 overhead makes 700. It will cost 700.
And how much will come in each week?
400 a shipment each day for 5 days is 2,000 a week.
But when will that 2,000 actually arrive?
Payable in full by September the 30th. It will arrive in 6 months' time.
So how do we pay the people, pay the bills, and buy the new lot of strip metal?
We have some money in the bank.
We have 2,000 in the bank.
Fine, we'll use that.
Very sophisticated. So, let us look at the cash flow forecast. We start week 1 with 2,000. How much comes in that week?
Nothing.
How much goes out?
700.
Which leaves?
1,300.
So we start week 2 with
1,300.
How much cash comes in week 2?
Nothing.
How much goes out?
700.
Leave.
600.
So we start week 3 with 600.
600.
How much cash comes in week 3?
Nothing.
How much goes out?
700.
Which leaves.
There is no need to go on. I can see where all this is leading because I am a sophisticated manager.
All this is leading to a cash deficit after 8 weeks of 3,600, which means bankruptcy as the consequence of accepting a profitable order.
I have changed my mind about accepting that order. My advice is that we should not accept it.
Perhaps we should not accept it. Perhaps we should negotiate weekly payments. Perhaps we should borrow some more working capital from the bank. But whatever we do, we start from a cash flow forecast. There's no perhaps.
So if you look at that in a simple way, no matter what business you have, you hopefully have a bank balance and you know how much is in the bank in a given day. You can say, what bills do I have to pay? What money do I expect to get in? So we look at our receivables and we say, this bill's been out for 5 weeks. They usually pay their bills in 30 days. We can expect that receivable in. So we look at what kind of income we would expect. We can, this is a guess. We don't know, but we can predict what's going to come in. We can predict what we have to pay. And those two could be tied together in cash management in some way. Let's say, for example, I've got a power bill that's due. Does that have to be paid this week or could it be stretched to next week? That's a cash management decision, right? You know which vendors you can push. You know which vendors you can't push. You know what day they'll turn your cell phone off, right? But maybe if you called them, they'd give you 3 more days. So maybe I could push this expenditure into this week, right? This is part of cash forecasting and managing. So you look at what do we have, what do we expect to get this week, this day, this month. There was a time in turning a company around, I looked at this every morning. What's our cash balance this morning? What do we think we might get today? Who can we go knock on a door? Who can we call? Can I get a credit card number? What do we have to pay today? What can we push till tomorrow? What's going to be left? What's left I put up here. That's what we got tomorrow, right? And so you do this for every, depending if the company's broke or you're doing a turnaround, you're doing this every morning. You're looking at the cash flow scenario every morning. You may be looking at it every week. You may look at it every month. Once the company's in the clear, you can stretch those periods of time out. And on your statement of cash flow, it might be looking at it by the quarter if the company's profitable and has been for a long period of time. But the concept is exactly the same, whether we change the period of time or not, depending on the basis of the company. And I hope we're getting the concept. We're almost done.
It's about that.
I now understand business finance. Do I?
Yes.
Yes, I do. Apparently, it's all about money. Money goes into investments, savings for a rainy day. It goes into fixed assets, things you mean to keep. And it goes into working capital, things you mean to sell. Working capital starts with raw materials. It then goes into labor to produce the teaspoons, the goods. It goes into the overhead to pay the bills. Then it goes to the customer who pays you more money than you put in. The money goes round again, and also you have some profit. Some of the profit goes in tax. Some goes into dividends, and the rest goes to making the business grow. I also understand that the more you produce each week, the more profit you make on each order, because you divide up the overhead into smaller portions. I even see that the less you produce each week, the less profit you make on each order, because it has to carry proportionately more of the overhead. I also understand the 3 crucial documents. The profit and loss account tells me what has happened to my money in the past. The balance sheet tells me where my money is now, and the cash flow forecast tells me where it will be coming from in the future. I am now ready to start my own business. You may be basic and unspoiled, but you have money. Will you come in with me?
I may be basic and unspoiled, but I'm not stark, staring sophisticated.
Okay, I will post that on Canvas as well. I will enter everybody's email address into Canvas. You should all be able to get signed in to Canvas. Hopefully, I'll have that done tomorrow by noon. The handout that we had today, we will go through these in slides. This is a document from Harvard. This is the way they teach business finance in their MBA program at Harvard. One of the ways, it's one of the tools that they use. And your homework assignment, we're gonna go through this in class on Thursday through to page 20. It's looking at those 3 financial statements we just talked about. And it's got an example of all 3 of them in there. And I would like you to read those 20 pages, the first 20 pages, by the day after tomorrow. So that shouldn't take a ton of time, because some of those pages are financial sheets you don't have to read every line on. They just point out 2 or 3 lines that you need to link to catch. But try to at least review it. We will talk about it in class, but you will get more out of it if this whole class, you get out of it what you put into it. That's the way school is always. And I can't force you to learn anything. That's up to you to learn. I hope we will try to make learning easy. The merry-go-round concept is the beginning principle that I think once I got that, everything about finance made more sense, because it's all time sensitive, and whether you're profitable or whether you're second wind has a lot to do with time, and that's the speed that the merry-go-round is going around. And we have, as bosses, as owners, as managers, we have some influence on those things. And so that's what we want to do is be able to craft our financials so that it positively reflects our business, and that we wind up with more cash at the end of the cycles. That's really what our objective is to do. Thank you for being here, each one. We're going to let out 5 minutes early this time, and we'll try to start on time. I will see you in this room. We should be in this room for the entire semester. I will see you here on Thursday at 5:30. Thanks. I'll take it. I'll get it to her. I got it. Okay. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. That's okay if you do.
I can't remember if I had a D in it or not.
It doesn't, but you got it right.
I scratched it out.
Thank you.
I think those out if we registered online.
If you've registered online, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where